Okay, we're going to set up the sewing machine to get ready to sew. We're going to actually load it with thread. So you start with your spool of thread. The direction that this goes on doesn't matter, which way it unwinds, it's not important. But this little spindle here tilts up just a little bit. That's just to allow ease of installation. Slide this down over the spindle all the way to the end. A lot easier. So now that that's on there, you can go ahead and push this down. Now we have these arrows. I'm going to use a little pointer. We have these little arrows here that are giving us the direction of the thread. So we don't want to look at these dotted lines. We want to follow this solid line, because remember, we're loading it to start sewing. So this is the first point I need to go through. There's a little eyelet here. So I'm going to grab that thread, loop it underneath there. There you go. Now I'm going through that eyelet. Next point is it enters in under this metal piece here. You can see the arrow going that way. When I exit, I turn and head this direction. So when I pull that, is the opening on the back edge of that piece of metal. I'm under the piece of metal. Now I start pulling it down towards this slot in the plastic right here. If I continue to follow this slot, there's another arrow here indicating I still continue down with my thread. There's another arrow here saying I go under and back up again. So I go underneath this colored piece of plastic, and then I come up this slot on the opposite side. The next place it needs to go, if you see this arrow, they show it going up, over, and back down again, but there's nothing here. So this is where I want to rotate my wheel, which makes the needle go up and down. I want to rotate that till the needle's all the way in its highest position, and when it is, you'll see there's a piece of metal that comes out of here. See that? So I need that piece of metal sticking up. Then my thread that came up through this slot here goes around into that hole, and then it heads back down again. The next place this thread needs to go is behind this piece of chrome metal. You probably can't see it from your angle, but it's a little hook with an opening behind there in line with this slot. So if you look at my pointer, see the arrow right here, my thread's coming down this slot, it's going behind that piece of metal. So the way I get there is I push the thread this way, then I come around this side of the chrome piece of metal, come on, and then I loop behind. So now I'm going down this slot behind this piece of metal. Okay, the next spot is a little tiny spring steel loop sitting right here at the top of the needle. You want the thread coming down as straight as possible down onto this needle, because then it's going to go through that hole. So now where I have to push this is around, same side, the right side, to get in behind that loop. I'm going to do this with my fingers, that's how you'll be doing it anyways. But there you go. Okay, now I'm behind the next loop. You can see this little spring steel piece right here, and behind it, now I'm going to come down and go into that hole. Now lucky for us, we don't have to try to fish that through there. That's an extremely small hole, barely bigger than the thread. But right here, I can push this down. This is an auto needle threader. So if you notice right here on the side of it, it has a little hook here. My thread's going to go under that. When I'm fully depressed, I'm going to come down, I'm going to go under here and then through this slot. Sorry, okay. Now I'm going to try to keep my hand out of the way and show you. I put the thread right through the middle of the threader. I pull the thread back so it's against the needle. I don't want to pull it hard because I got to allow the auto threader to pull it through the needle. So when I lift this, my left finger up, it's going to try to pull the thread through that hole in the needle. Let's see if it works. And it did. Now all I have is just a little loop that came through. If you look, I want to continue to pull the full length of the thread all the way through the needle. Once I have that through, that's it. I'm done with my top thread. I want to have at least 12 inches of this sticking out, and this just goes right up to the side. You don't want it under your foot. You need it right here, and like I said, 12 inches out. We're moving on to our bobbin threading, also known as the bottom thread. This is the bobbin. It's the spool of thread that sits down in this compartment, and it's the thread that's going to come up under this foot out of this hole right here. Let me move the foot up. So there's a hole right here. That's the same hole that the needle's going to enter. See the needle going down into that hole? That's the hole that the bobbin thread needs to come out of. So there's a little lever here. I'm going to press this to the right. If you see that release this door, I can then go ahead and lift this, pull this out of our way. Okay, now here, this is important. So this bobbin, this is the direction. So the black arrow is the rotation, or the direction the bobbin's going to spin. The red is the direction the thread needs to unwind off of the bobbin. So when I put this bobbin in, I need to come off of the spool in the direction indicated here. So you can see the thread's coming from this side and it's unwinding this direction. So this is the right way. It's coming off the spool to the left. That's the direction this has to sit down in there. Now give yourself a few inches of thread, or even a foot. Thread's cheap. You don't have to worry about it. Give yourself plenty of extra sticking out. And then hold on to one side of this and drop this bobbin in. So on the diagram, the thread's coming up and there's a little notch right there. It's hard to see in the diagram, but if you look here, the sidewall where the bobbin's placed, there is a notch in the little chrome. That's where the thread needs to drop into that little notch. Now, once I'm in that notch, I'm not sure if you can see this in the video, but just after this chrome piece of metal with the notch is a piece of spring steel that's attached. I'm going to wedge the thread between the spring steel and this chrome piece. That's going to actually put tension on the thread. That's intentional. So by doing so, if I follow the diagram, I'm going to pull this to the left, and I'm on the back of this chrome piece, the outside edge of this chrome piece, and between this spring steel. So I'm pulling it to the left till I get to this other notch. There's a little notch right there. That's where that thread needs to end. So now I'm actually behind that spring steel. That's the end of that for now. I put the thread through where it wants to go. Now I want to close this door. Even though the thread's coming out of this opening, that's fine. I'm going to put this door back in and let it clip down. Okay, if you see my thread now, I'm just coming out of this little plastic door. We're not done yet. Now that our bottom thread is fed through its little tension retainer, close this lid back. The thread's sticking out here. We're not done. Our next step is we're going to manually rotate the wheel for the sewing machine, which is going to drive this needle down. Same direction. I have to go counterclockwise with the wheel, which is pulling the top of the wheel towards me. What this is going to do is it's going to allow the top thread to enter this hole with the needle, hook underneath the bottom thread, and pull it back up. Now you'll see one thread going down and then a second one coming back up. It'll have a loop. There's not enough strength to pull it through. I'll have to grab it after. Oh, one thing I didn't mention. This is the foot. This is always in the upright position. It's only down when you're sewing. There's a lever on the back of here. That's the position for sewing. It pushes your material against these grabber feet. These grabber feet are what pull the material through as you're sewing. This is always up unless you're sewing. So now I'm going to turn the sewing machine wheel towards myself counterclockwise. The needle's going down with the thread in it. It goes down all the way. I continue turning it. Now it comes back up. I'm not sure if you can see, but there's two threads there now. It actually looped underneath this bobbin thread. You can't see it. That action is happening underneath this metal plate. But I'm going to pull the needle all the way up, and the way I know up all the way is that metal piece on top is going up as high as it can. Now I want to grab this thread, that slack that I left sticking out. I want to grab this. I want to pull it slowly, and it's going to lift up that bottom thread. Pull it, pull it, pull it. There's that bottom thread. I saw it come up. You can actually, it's hard to see in the video, but there is a loop there. The thread from the bobbin came up the hole, goes over my top thread and back down again. I want to grab that loop because see, I have all this slack sitting over here. I need that coming out of this hole down here. So I grab that loop that it hooked, and I pull this, pull this, pull. See, it went back into that clear door. Now it's coming out. I'm going to lift the foot up so you can see. Now it's coming out of this hole. It's kind of looped over the foot here. I don't want that, so I want to pull that through this slot on the front of the foot. There we go, and get it down off the bottom. This is when you're now ready to sew. The bottom bobbin thread comes up through. Both of those threads extend out the side. I like to have at least 12 inches of both. I can just yank on them. You see that spinning as I pull it? I'm also pulling the top one. 12 inches at least. Thread's cheap, like I said. You can cut it after you sew. There's a cutter right here, and all you do is you pull out extra, you grab it with both hands, you loop it through that, and it cuts. So there's about 8 inches. Let me pull a little more. But that's the way I want it. I want the bottom thread up through that hole, cross this metal plate and out, and I want the top thread through the needle and head it out. We're ready to sew. I'm going to take our pink paper, pretend that's a piece of material. I'm going to take a single sheet, but I'll fold it over just so it's a little thicker. Paper's a lot thinner than material. Say this is my cloth or my material. I now want this under the foot. I'm not worried about where these threads are. As long as I left them 12 inches long, up out of the way, I just get this underneath there. Once I get to my starting point, I'm going to make a mark. Let's say this is where I want to stitch a seam. I'm going to continue this way. You know what? I can go closer to the edge. You can always work both directions. But okay, this is my starting point. So the needle is coming down inside this channel. If you look at where the needle is currently residing, that's my starting point. That's where I want to line up with this. Now the reason this slot is longer than the needle is because depending on the stitch, this needle may move from side to side. It may move in patterns. Right now we're on stitch A, which is a straight up and down. There is a wheel to adjust the distance between where it enters the paper and exits the paper. One here, one here, one here, and that's based on the number you choose on the wheel. The way it changes the distance from here to here is these grabber feet. How often it moves the material before it goes through again. So I'm going to show you in slow motion. I'm going to set this here, drive my foot down that now pinches my material in against the grabber feet. Now I'm going to turn it by hand so you can watch what happens. So needle goes down. The top thread is being looped under the bottom thread, and then it's getting pulled right back up. Now here's where you're going to see it move the material. I'm still going to turn it, turn it, turn it. There it is. Those grabber feet are now going to advance my material forward, and then it's going to go down again. And that's going to continue over and over and over again. Okay, let me just do a little bit electronically with the foot pedal. Oh, it would help if the machine was on. There we go. Now I move the material side to side to follow my pattern. I was doing a straight line, but if I wanted to turn, I would just pull this way, pull this way, pull this way. Okay, now say I want to get to a point where I want to stop. I'm done. I want to pull this out now. You'll notice the needle's down and through my material. I can't pull it out with this. I need to manually, with my hand, turn that wheel again till the needle's up at its highest position. All the way, all the way. I'll see that piece of metal that's at the top of this protrude up. Okay, now my needle's up. I can lift the foot. I lift the foot. Now I want to carefully pull my material to the side. Now you notice I still have the top thread and bottom thread. It's a little wound up here, not a big deal. I just drag it out, give myself 12 inches or so, grab the thread, cut it. Cut it on the little cutter. There you go. Now on your material, after you're done, you can cut these off. Cut this off. But I'm done with this. If I want to start sewing again, I just make sure my thread there. It's not too big a deal if it's under the foot like that, but I like to have it out, both of these out to the side, and plenty of slack here. I don't want one getting sucked down in there and losing the end of it. I need them out.